So, getting into some more details about this network topology and this idea of how things are connected and how to view them. The thing is, a social network shape impacts everyone. You can see the clear difference that this on the left here is much different than what's on the right, and that everybody here is connected together, and this group isn't particularly close. The thing about smaller, tighter networks is it's better for diffusion, because as you think about short distances, then people come into contact with each other. But the thing is, if I want a viral effect, if people are too close together, guess what? They're all clumped together and it's not spread out. I'm not getting much in the way of variety. And so the thing is, open networks tend to bring you in more information, whereas closed networks tend to give you better activity. What is it that you want? A lot depends on what your goals are in marketing. If you're trying to get sales, you want a closer network. If you're trying to build a market or to get to know as many people as possible, you want an open market. Here's an example. The left is an example of a pattern of a tweet. And as you can see, it spreads out pretty rapidly and in different ways. And the thing is, you see the clusters, and also you see the explosion connection from the original start point. On the other hand, people who read graphic novels are a very concise group, and what you see is there are a couple of very key influencers, and this group all interacts together. This is a commonality. But as you can see, this is a very packed-in network, and there are very few points I actually have to hit if I want to contact people. The thing is, in a social network, it's not necessarily about title. The power of a social network comes from somebody who's respected. And you've probably seen that for those of you who are working or whatever. But there are certain people, maybe they don't have a title, but because of their actions, the way they work, the way they treat others, tend to get more respect. And this gets into the diffusion of innovations theory. And that's that the key for this stuff spreading out are influencers. And influencers are people that people trust, that people listen to. Exactly the same idea. The thing is, you have to be careful about, though, is like in a startup, you can start to splinter because you start forming tribes. And so people start blaming each other, and you as a CEO have to break that up. Silicon Valley was based on network formation. These gentlemen up here are the Traitorous Eight. William Shockley, who won the Nobel Prize for semiconductor physics. Basically, he was the one who figured out silicon. Anyway, he went and formed a company. He was great at recruiting talent. He created some amazing people. Some of the people in this picture, let's see, there's Gordon Moore and Bob Noyce, who founded Intel. There's also Eugene Kleiner, who founded Kleiner Perkins, which is one of the biggest VC firms, but he started the whole Sand Hill Road thing in Silicon Valley. But the thing is, each of these guys were very close together, and they decided that they weren't going to put up with William Shockley anymore. I mean, he was like bugging their phones and things like that. The reason why you don't hear about William Shockley, who's a Stanford professor, is because Shockley basically, in part of my language, went batshit crazy. I mean, he started believing in like eugenics, and he believed everybody with an IQ of under 90 should be sterilized, and he just, man, went crazy off the deep end. But anyway, each of these guys went out and formed their own businesses, but they stayed connected to each other, and that led to the explosion which formed Silicon Valley. And actually 71%, and the first company they formed was Fairchild Semiconductor. So all these companies that came out of it were called Fairchildren. And 71% of the valley can actually trace its lineage back to that. If you look at patents, you can see the pattern, and you find that there are a few key inventors who pretty much drove the industry in Silicon Valley. And so you can look over that. In terms of networks, so What are the key features of it? We're concerned about gatekeepers, the people I have to go through in order to get from one point to another. Liaisons. Do I have bridges, which are basically segments? Do I have isolates? Those are the people I don't really care about. But the problem with isolates is they create noise in my system. And of course, the big thing you want to find are who are the influencers, who are the gatekeepers, not gatekeepers, but basically the people who can affect a lot of people. Okay, cluster limits. This is very important. This is called Dunbar's number. And that's that the size of a genuine social network where people can all interact and all know each other is about 150. Typically it's more like 120, and you see it in startup companies. You can grow to 120 and you still feel like a close-knit company. And then once you get beyond 150, that's it. You become a small company or corporation. You don't feel it anymore. You might have 600 friends, but seriously, do you interact with all of them at the same time? But if you drew a map and see where your friends, besides you, no other friends, you would probably find clusters of 150. This is why in the military, a company captain basically is in charge of about 150 soldiers. They recognize this. And so the thing is, they figured this out in anthropology. We're talking about hundreds of years of research. And that's what they find, that the maximum size of a really well-functioning, close-knit village is about 150 people. And what it comes down to is our ability to recognize and track others. And this is part of what LinkedIn was founded on, and what's called the small world phenomenon. And that's that any person can be linked to any other person through 5 to 7 contacts. Another rule beyond that is the Jennifer Dryden theory of corporate governance, and that's that when you actually have large corporations, you're not dealing with 10,000 people, you're really dealing with 5. The 5 key decision makers flow over the entire organization. And Jen was a gal who I actually went to business school with. We were in the same study group. And she was at Disney, and she knew the top 5 people at Disney, and she had quite a bit of influence. And she knew Michael Eisner. Now she's vice president of a bank who manages like $1 billion worth of properties. But there is legitimacy to this, because if you look at the hierarchical nature of companies, you see where it all comes out. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, you can read this, but these are measures in a social network. Degree, structural holes are basically points in the network, like if we could, like for example, if I have a circle, if I put one person in the middle of that, boy, that would make a lot of sense. Structural equivalence is important, because when you find a market, and you know you can market to this kind of pattern, if you can find another pattern like that, guess what? That's another bucket of people that you can market to. Closeness, radiality, cohesion, it all depends on how strong you are and what's the distance between you. Density is your actual and potential connections. And so this has a much different density than this. This everybody interacts, the first one didn't. And it's all kind of the same stuff about how sparse or dense a network can be. So what is it that, so I can take all of that, and now how do I condense it down? Well, what it comes down to is when I talk about a node, I want to know the size, how it influences others, how active is it, and how it impacts the network. Links tells me about distance, frequency. Are these links direct from point A to point B, or is it a go around, indirect? And is it a critical path? A critical path means how often is it used, or is it the longest distance? In terms of networks, we're talking about the shape of all these nodes, whether they're wise or decentralized. How does a topology map out? And so For the final lecture, we're going to start off talking about critical mass, and that's say, how do I grow activity enough where I don't have to invest time and effort, that through the natural interactions of this network, it'll run on its own. And that's what's referred, that level is referred to critical mass, where your network is self-sustaining.